on our NHS. Once more, we must all stay home. If it is essential to go out, remember, wash your hands, cover your face indoors, and keep your distance from others. Vaccines give clear hope for the future, but for now, you must all stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Whether your life is about victory or your victories are about life, whether you're chasing every last second or just counting them down, whether you're leading the way or just trying to keep up, you can do it with confidence using INEOS Hygienics, hospital-grade sanitizers.
Fly Audible and travel the world. Listen up and settle back with thousands of destinations to explore. Treat your ears to an epic stay beyond the wall. Travel long haul to Mars. It'll take your breath away. How does a city break in friendly Gilead sound? Everyone's welcome. Whether it's a spellbinding trip to Hogwarts or traveling back in time to ancient Greece, we'll get you there in style. There is another way to get away. The difference is audible.
Well, who took over number one after Band Aid? Oh no, 84. So who was number one? 84.
Now here with the latest headlines, it's the ITV News.
The most dangerous situation in living memory, the Chief Medical Officer's dire NHS warning, as another 55,000 return positive coronavirus tests. Doctors describe a system on the verge of being overwhelmed.
It's just the sheer number of people who are coming in and are sick enough that they might die.
The Health Secretary pleads for people to remain at home and makes a pledge over immunisations.
Every adult will be offered a vaccine by the autumn, absolutely.
Also tonight, a special report on the Republican politician charged over Wednesday's riots in Washington and...
We declared it's a great effort from Madison, it's 3!
League Two Crawley humble Premier League leads in a famous FA Cup giant killing.
This is ITV News with Lucrezia Millerini.
Good evening. For a 12th consecutive day, the number of people testing positive for COVID-19 has passed 50,000, putting yet more pressure on a health system that's already under enormous strain. Today, the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, described the NHS predicament as the most dangerous anyone can remember. Tonight, officials reported another 563 deaths and said that in total, 54,940 positive cases have been returned in the past 24 hours. Geraint Vincent reports on the people who are living with the consequences.
Is this the outbreak's gravest moment? Beyond the lines of ambulances, an answer in the testimony of those who confront its horrors every day.
It's just the sheer number of people who are coming in and are sick enough that they might die. There are a significant number with extreme distress, so breathless that they are panicked and calling out, reaching out, and that is probably the hardest part of what we've been seeing.
England's Chief Medical Officer warns that the NHS in some parts of the country is currently facing the most dangerous situation anyone can remember. If the virus continues on this trajectory, says Chris Whitty, hospitals will be in real difficulties and soon. The time people wait for care will continue to increase to potentially unsafe levels. There will be avoidable deaths. As ever more hospital resources are devoted to the pandemic, there's less for everything else.
It's very hard to hear the word that you've got cancer. Excuse me.
Surgery to deal with Stephanie's early-stage breast cancer had to be cancelled on New Year's Eve.
You gear yourself up to have an operation, and then to be told it's not going to happen is devastating. It's scary.
Today, the government said another 563 people had died within 28 days of testing positive for the virus.
You always look at statistics and they're just numbers. You never ever expect that somebody in your life is going to become one of those statistics.
Jahan mourns his dad, Asaf, a restaurateur from Lancaster who passed away in November.
He was just at a point where he should have been taking his foot off the pedal and starting to enjoy life, especially with the grandkids. And he did have a lot of life left to live.
England's chief medic also wrote today of new vaccines, drugs and tests. Things will get better, but not yet. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
It's extremely...
Well, leading politicians today insisted staying at home remained the best way to tackle the current coronavirus crisis, despite some scientists calling for tougher restrictions. The Health Secretary said rolling out vaccines remained the long-term fix. Matt Hancock said the immunisation programme was going so well that every adult in the country would be offered a jab by the autumn. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports.
There are places where it doesn't much look like a lockdown. This is East London, which has some of the highest infection rates in the country. Transport use does seem to be higher than the first lockdown. Religious services are going ahead, and tomorrow some schools will be as much as half full. It's not even that the rules are being broken, but the NHS is under severe and growing pressure.
It is working harder than it's ever worked before, and we can all do something to help, which is to stay at home. Because every time you try to flex the rules, that could be fatal.
The government is resisting calls to tighten the rules, instead doubling down on the stay-at-home message and on enforcing social distancing. And there is so far broad consensus on that approach.
I think the most important thing about lockdown is that message of stay at home gets through. We're at the darkest stage of this pandemic now. It's a race between the virus and the vaccine, and everybody needs to follow that government guidance.
But even as fire stations and conference centres are turned into vaccination hubs, the race is not one the vaccine can win in the next couple of weeks, when soaring infection rates will put more people in hospital. So many scientists say tougher restrictions will be needed.
I think the government is facing some really hard choices at the moment. They're trying not to lock down in all areas if at all possible. My perception is that actually we're not locking down hard enough, and that's partly that people aren't complying.
7 mass vaccination centres like this one in Stevenage are due to open to the public tomorrow, having been rehearsing their systems vaccinating staff. The Health Secretary says all adults will have been offered a vaccination by the autumn, but it's the next few weeks that NHS staff are most worried about.
So, Carl, the government under increasing pressure to go further with restrictions. Do you think that will happen?
Well, at the moment, they don't want to do that. The argument is that the current lockdown was only brought in legally in the middle of last week, and it will take a couple of weeks to see whether it's had any effect. However, what scientists are arguing increasingly is that currently the lockdown being used to fight a new virus, which is more transmissible than the original, is actually a slightly weaker lockdown than the one that we saw last March. So there is a logic to saying there should be some tighter restrictions. And I think the government will come in under increasing pressure to follow that scientific advice. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they do tighten up some of the restrictions, although they're already pretty tight. There isn't a great deal of room for them to manoeuvre.
Okay, Carl, thank you. In Indonesia, the black box flight recorders on board a passenger jet which crashed into the Java Sea, killing 62 people, have now been located. Search and rescue teams have also started to recover bodies and parts of the Boeing 737-500, which went down minutes after taking off from Jakarta yesterday. Martha Fairley reports.
At the port of Tanjung Priok, they are slowly adding to the collection of debris recovered from the Java Sea. Each fragment believed to be part of Sriwijaya Air Flight 182, carefully inspected by accident investigators. Personal items belonging to the 62 passengers and crew who were on board, recorded and bagged. Earlier today, divers confirmed they'd found part of the plane's wreckage 75 feet below the surface after a Navy ship detected a signal from the aircraft. The chief commander of the Indonesian army confirming they'd located the plane's black box data and cockpit voice recorders and hope to retrieve them soon. The flight had been delayed by bad weather before it took off from Jakarta yesterday, but disappeared from radar after 4 minutes. At the airport in Borneo, where relatives had been expecting to greet passengers, they now anxiously wait for news. The airline says the plane was fit to fly, but as the search continues, there's little hope of finding any survivors. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
In the United States, there have been further charges brought against people over Wednesday's riots in Washington. Among them, a man who wore a bearskin headdress and another who was pictured carrying the Speaker Nancy Pelosi's lectern. Meanwhile, a politician from West Virginia has resigned his post after also being charged over his involvement. And as our global security editor Rohit Kachru has discovered, this isn't the first time Derek Evans has been in trouble with the law.
He's an elected politician who filmed himself storming. Derek Evans is in the Capitol! But since he posted this online, he's been arrested, charged, and forced to resign. He was meant to be voting on local issues this week, but his return to the state buildings was to a West Virginia courthouse. When we arrived at his home, his friends and neighbors gathered together, forming a wall of defense.
I'll answer one question. He's a great guy. Done. Get out.
Okay, but what about his, what about what he did at the Capitol buildings?
It ain't none of your business, or your business. For one, you're from Britain, right?
Yeah.
You're in the USA.
Yeah.
Huh?
They called the police, and then Evans's wife.
You guys, I guess you can sit out here for as long as you would like, but there's going to be no comments from us or for
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
But this is a moment of catharsis for Jamie Miller, who went to court to get a restraining order against him. He took his campaign against abortion to the women's clinic where she worked, leading daily protests.
There would be like 50, 60 people at the clinic with him. And he targeted me. He found out my name. He found out my children's names. Oh yeah, they followed me in cars. They called me. They recorded me. I'm on all of their sites.
And how did that feel for you?
It was terrifying.
But it was when he confronted her outside the clinic as patients were being treated inside, then posted the video online that she went to court. All that money you guys.
He's not stopped me. He's just there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm stronger than he is, so he's not gonna affect my life after this. I guarantee it. No way. I'm done with it. So.
Freedom! Freedom! Evans aspired to be in Congress and was, but he'll be in court too, where many in his community say they'll support him. Rohit Kachru, ITV News, West Virginia.
Here, a 14-year-old boy has been arrested after a robbery which left a delivery driver in a critical condition in hospital. It happened in Romilly near Stockport on Friday. Officers say thieves stole the driver's car before knocking him down as they drove away in it. And a sailor has been rescued from the English Channel after his yacht drifted for 3 days without a working engine or radio. Kent police came across the vessel while on a routine patrol off the port of Dover this morning. And finally, the third round of the FA Cup has thrown up another giant killing as League Two Crawley Town thrashed Premier League Leeds 3-0. It's the first time the West Sussex side have ever beaten a team from the top flight. Dan Salisbury-Jones was watching.
Leeds boss Marcelo Bielsa picked a team that showed he was concerned about a scare, and in John Yems, Crawley had a manager with added motivation after being rejected by Leeds for a job he thought was his 2 years ago. But desire alone wouldn't allow them to beat a team ranked 3 leagues above them. They needed quality like this from Nick Cerula. One of the great FA Cup goals, but his boss looked unmoved. That changed 2 minutes later, though, when Ashley Nadesan got the League Two side a remarkable second.
Leeds are crumbling here.
The bounce beat three-time Champions League winner Kiko Casilla, and his luck was really out when he teed up Jordan to Mark Wright, who came off Crawley's bench, and he might well be busy advising his teammates on how to deal with their newfound celebrity. Dan Salisbury-Jones, ITV News.
And that is it for now. I am back with the late news at 10:05. Until then, enjoy your evening and take care.
It could be chilly out there today. It might even be jacket weather. Heinz no added sugar beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello there, very good evening to you. I hope you've had a lovely weekend. It's been very cold by day and by night over the last few days, but things are set to get milder, even briefly, in the next 24 or so hours, and we've got heavy rain as well. This heavy rain is giving a weather warning there across western parts of Scotland, but accompanying the heavy rain is that much milder air. I mean, stunningly milder compared to what we've seen recently. This is warmer than what we've seen during the day over the last few days, although it has to be said it's still very cold across Shetland through tonight. Still pretty chilly, particularly across southeastern parts of England. Temperatures away from the towns and cities dropping fairly widely below freezing. Now, those frontal systems are going to continue heading southwards as we look ahead to tomorrow. They're mostly patchy, but heavy rain at times, particularly western Scotland, turning to snow on its leading edge, and heavy rain as well across northwestern parts of England and Wales as well. But as you can see, it is going to be markedly milder through tomorrow and chilly, I think, again for Tuesday. See you later.
Heinz no added sugar beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
Congratulations, your bill.